the secrets that make us sick. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. So let's have a conversation. It's time. We're taking it out of the box. Yeah, yeah. We're taking it out of the box. We're taking it out of the box. You know it's time. So let's talk about it.
Well, it's that time. It's Tuesday. It's 7 o'clock p.m. and we are about to get outside the box. I am really excited to bring on some guests who are going to be sharing with us. First, we have Ed. Hey, Ed, how are you? Now, you are mic'd now, but I think that's there you go.
Sorry, can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. What's that? Is that the Verizon? Can you hear me now?
As a
And we
matter of
got
fact,
Tia. Hey, Tia. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Hi.
Oh, there you go, girl. All right. There's Q. What's going on, Q?
Hello.
And then there's Derek. Hey, Derek.
Hello.
Hey, I'm just going to tell everybody right up front, this is going to be an incredible conversation. But even more than that, when I grow up, I'm going to be like Q and I'm going to get the professional mic, with the stand on it, and you can have it all up here and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so let me tell you, the first thing I want you to know is that this is going to be conversational. We're just going to have a conversation, and there are going to be a lot of questions that I don't know the answer to, and I'm sure many of my viewers won't know as well. So some of it are going to be very basic questions, just kind of help us understand. But I do want to assure you, this conversation will not be about judgment. It's not going to be about, all of that kind of stuff. This is going to be conversation. And so let's get started. The first thing I would like for you, Edward, you, Tia, if you would both just kind of answer, just so I can get a baseline of the conversation. Do either of you identify as Christian?
formally.
Formally. Well, that's a good way to answer, because I was going to ask if you're not now, were you before? Okay, so you said formally. What about you, Tia?
I would have to agree. I do believe there is a higher power, and I'm more spiritual but I do take on. I grew up in the Baptist church, so I can't say that it's still not in me, because it definitely is.
Okay, and so before we move the conversation needle even further, let me just ask you: was the choice of how you wanted to live your life, did that impact whether or not you maintained that relationship of Christianity and church or what have you?
I was far from it before.
Okay. What about you, Edward?
I had a separation of thoughts well before I was thinking about relationships.
Okay. All right, great. So now here's the prevailing question for me. What is the difference between plural marriage or polygamy and polyamory? How would either you kind of define what the difference is? Because I guess, again, in my unaware mind, I don't know what the difference is.
There's one major difference. Polygamy is purely a legal standpoint. And as far as I'm aware, I have not seen anywhere where polygamy was equally treated for men and women.
Okay.
I may be wrong about that one, but so far, everything I've seen, it was a man was allowed to have multiple wives. Whereas polyamory, there's no legal ramifications. It doesn't have anything to do with a formal legal relationship. but it is equally considered for anyone, regardless of gender or identity. You can date multiple people.
Right.
All right.
And
Would
the
you agree
word
with that, Tia?
polyamory, yes, I would agree with that. And the word polyamory basically means poly, which means many, and amory, which means love. So many loves is what the word breaks down to.
Okay. And so it's interesting because as I go through my list of questions, and I have a lot of questions for us to have a conversation about, let me tell you. So, where did I have it written? Okay. Is it always, and maybe this is my brain going to polygamy, but is it always one man and multiple women? Is that the makeup?
No, a relationship is whatever I guess you choose to make that relationship be. My
Okay.
situation is that I have a husband whom I've been married to for 30 years, and I have another partner whom I call my wife, and her and I have been together for 2 years.
Okay.
And he has a girlfriend, and she's currently single on her other side, but she is still open to date whomever she wants.
Okay. All right. And so I just had a question come in. Could you have them to introduce themselves and say what they I didn't hold on, I'm trying to read it. The current relationship. Okay, I didn't do that, and that was rude of me. Let me give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves and then kind of tell me what your relationship status is.
My
And
name is Tia Boyd. I'm currently in a poly-monogamous. I currently have two partners. So I am not open to dating at this current time unless the dynamics of our relationship change and I decide to go and be like solo poly. But as of right now, I am only dating my husband and I'm only with my wife. But they can still date, so they have another partner besides me.
okay, and that's going to steer us in the direction, Tia. But I'm gonna get back with that. Okay, Edward, you talk about you.
My name is Edward. I'm currently polyamorous. I'm in what we refer to as a triad at the moment. So I have a steady, primary partner who is a woman, and we are currently both dating another woman that she is open to date whoever she chooses. And that's where we are right now. But I've been in pretty much every form of a polyamorous relationship you can think of.
Okay, all right. So, Derek, had you before today heard of polyamory in terms of the makeup of polyamory relationship or polyamorous relationships?
Yes, I have. I've heard of them. I cannot say that I have known anybody who was a part of that type of relationship. So I'm interested in hearing this conversation.
Okay. So, Q, I know that you do a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. When you first got introduced to the idea of polyamory, what, like, and guys, the questions are open if you want to have questions, but I have a lot. So, what was your initial take on learning about polyamory? And you're muted, by the way, Q. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Number one,
With your big
my name is
boom
Q.
box, deep mouth, microphone. Okay.
If I'm hot, let me know.
No, you good.
And I don't mean hot. I mean like if my microphone hot. So, all right.
Oh
So,
yeah. Well,
now,
well yeah. I know you ain't hot like
the
that.
other-
I'm
I
hot
know
like
the-
that.
I
I'm
got
hot
the
like
other
that.
side.
That's how hot I am.
I know the other side. So, nothing. I've been doing Meeting of the Minds / Free Thinkers for probably a little bit over a decade. So there's no conversation that's foreign to me. So when they talked about, we had conversations about polyamory. The term itself was something that I wasn't familiar with. And so we did a show sometime last year about it, and very interesting just to learn that there are it's terminology, it's rules, it's standards, it's ethical
Yeah, I'm
lines.
getting into all of that.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of things going on. So it was very interesting to me because I think from the outside, people looking in, I think we look at it from our messy minds and we just look at it as a pass, you know, a pass to do what you want.
A pass
but
to-
it's much more structured than that. So that's what was interesting to me.
But that brings me to what my next question is: Can you cheat? Can you cheat in a polyamorous relationship? And both of you are going yes. So if we go by Tia, what you said, which was the many loves, well then how can I cheat?
Well, there's dishonesty or someone's not being truthful to you. It's still the same, because if you're telling me that you're with me and you're dating this person, but then you go out and you have an encounter with someone else that's not the partner who you said that you're with, then that's cheating. You're being dishonest. You're not disclosing like full information, which that is a part of the agreement, because there are agreements, there are guidelines, are hard lines to be, drawn, and basically almost like contracting, with the relationship.
So there's rules to engagement in the polyamorous relationship.
It's just like any other relationship. There's just more people involved. But anything that would be considered cheating in a regular monogamous relationship, if you and your partner or partners would consider that a violation of your trust, then that's cheating. People forget about the relationship part of it.
And that's what I want to explore, because I heard the term from you, Tia, and Matt. I'm finna say Mad Zen, Edward, madzen.com, Edward, whatever. But I heard you say you are in a polymonogamous relationship. I don't understand that. I don't understand what that means.
I only have these two partners. So there's like all kind of different categories you can be, because there's poly-solo. Poly-solo, they don't have any main partners. They don't have any just this is my main partner who I'm with all the time, and then I date and I see other people from time to time. They just kind of like date all the time. They don't necessarily have a main person, and they tend to be by themselves, live by themselves. They don't live with anyone else, and they go visit their partners. I live with both of my partners.
So
and the
y'all three, y'all
between,
cohabitate.
We all live together. And I guess a lot of people look at our relationship, because then most people are used to triads. So if we're living together, they're used to being like, well, then her girlfriend or her wife or whatever must be with her husband, but that's not the case for us.
Oh, okay. Now, see, you blowing my mind here. You're blowing my mind. So your wife and your husband don't
commingle, no.
Yes.
I mean, we all take care of each other. We all live in the same house. We all do for each other and look after each other, and they love each other, just not in the same magnitude that they love me.
Okay. All right. Now, Edward, you said there are rules in every relationship. And so how are the rules developed in a multi-way relationship? How are they developed?
I think the easiest way to try and think about it, because with all those different titles, yes, there's a lot of ways to make it more complicated than it needs to be. But in the simplest terms, just think of it the same way you would have with any other relationship, where, you just are respectful of each other's feelings. You are respectful of, basically just treat them like a person. The only difference is you have multiple people. So it does get more complicated as far as if you're dating 3 people or 4 people. Now you all have to respect, okay, this person may have different boundaries than this person. So just because this partner, and somebody asked for a definition of partner, just anyone you're dating in any way you can refer to as a partner, and then you can get in the weeds and give them extra titles as like a primary and all these other things. But anyone that you're dating can be a partner.
Primary, secondary, tertiary.
Right. And
that's
people get
confusing.
Yeah, I try and avoid all that unless you're talking with somebody who already knows what you're talking about. So if
Okay.
you're new to
All
the
right.
conversation, partner and partners, and I only say primary, it's the most common one as far as like if you have someone that you're the most invested in, like in my situation, I have my primary girlfriend and we've been together the longest. Anyone else we meet, we've met together. So she's the primary and someone else would be, an addition to that sort of thing. Other people have it in a different way. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. But it's just whatever rules work for you within your group of, partners, so you can all be respectful of their lives, their needs, and their boundaries. You can't worry about it too much in trying to define it.
Okay, and I would imagine this is probably for you, Tia. If you truly love your spouse, how can you be okay with them dating and sleeping with others? How would you answer that question?
What does love have to do with sleeping with other people? There's people that go out and they have one night stands. They love them. And what does me loving him have with him going out and being with somebody else?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
People
So
often
relationships are
con-
different in terms of
but
how you
people
Well,
define
often
them.
confuse sex and love in the same manner. There's
Okay.
right.
people that have lots of intimate relationships with others without ever having sex.
Yeah, I find it a
Uh,
weird question when people ask that. Like, no one ever asks you if you have more than three siblings. If you have more than one sibling, nobody ever says, oh, your second sibling, you must love them less. You never truly loved your first sibling when another one comes along. Or if you have more than one child, nobody ever says, oh, you can't possibly love your second child as much as you love your first one, as if love is a finite thing. It's not pizza. If I give a slice away, I'm not missing a slice of pizza. Love is an emotion, right? So it has literally no limits. But as soon as you put sex into the mix of a possibility, and there's tons of polyamorous relationships with no sex involved at all.
Okay,
So
you done blow
people
my
get
mind
stuck on that.
again. You
Yeah.
just blew it again because I had a complete misunderstanding. Just blew it all over again. So there are polyamorous relationships where there is no sex involved.
Polyamorous is
Correct.
about love, not sex.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And people seem to think that just because you're poly, that all we do is sit around and have sex. And the truth is, there's more conversation than sex because you have to always be considerate of somebody's feelings, of this person's emotions, and like where they are mentally, and like it's just not always fun and games. Like I could have done something, well, I feel this way today, and so like I need for you to comfort me in this way. It's not all about sex, but people literally think that we just sit around and have orgies, and that's not the case.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you just so that I'm transparent. That's what I thought it was all about.
That's what most people think.
I thought it was a legal way to get anybody good as you wanted.
People confuse swinging with polyamory all the time, and they are
Yes.
very, very different things. Swinging is sex without an emotional attachment. Polyamory is relationships. It is about love. Sex is a byproduct that may or may not be involved, but it is not a required ingredient.
Okay. So that makes that now I have some more questions. um so I think you guys answered this because I said, does everyone relate? And I had that in quotes, relate to each other. And Tia made clear that that's not the case. Does jealousy arise?
Yes.
Just like any
Yes,
relationship.
it happens. Like if say you with your partner and then they have a new partner, so now they're cultivating a relationship with that new partner, and you're used to having all that time. So now you're having to share that time, and it becomes foreign and weird, and it makes you feel away because like, well, I'm used to you being with me all the time, and now you're giving that person my attention, and you have to. Uh, for me and for us, we ask, well, why are you feeling that way? Let's let's sit in that moment and let's understand why are you having these emotions.
So
And
you don't
then
avoid the conversation. You just
No,
go boom right
no,
at it.
you can't
you
avoid the
are very
conversation because
upfront.
then you cannot have that, because then if you continue to have these feelings and you continue to let your partner continue with that relationship without ever addressing it, then you're going to have resentment towards their new partner who had nothing to do with nothing, and it's not fair.
One of the healthiest things about polyamorous relationships is it forces you to communicate more openly and honestly, not only with your partner, but with yourself. If you can't be
Hmm.
honest about how you feel, recognize it, and express it to your partner, you won't survive in that kind of relationship. But it's just like any relationship with jealousy. If you don't bring it up immediately and address it fairly and honestly, it would ruin a monogamous relationship as quickly as it would any other relationship. Polyamorous people just have more practice at communication.
Q.
Question: and this is a question for Edward and Tia, are you sometimes hesitant to, whether it's permanent, temporary, to bring another person in who hasn't experienced that lifestyle, because they may not mentally, like you're talking about, they may not be able to handle what that actually means?
Yes and no. So, yes, there is a fear because you don't know how they're going to react and what it's going to be. No, because they may be able to adjust and they may be able to come into the lifestyle and be whatever it is that you guys are trying to cultivate. But when dating somebody that's never heard of it, never been a part of it, don't really understand it, and they need like all kind of schooling, if they are open-minded, I hold people hands. I give them literature to read, and I always give them an out. Before I feel like my feelings are becoming too entangled in it, I will let them know, like, this is my levels of feeling that I'm having for you right now. But I understand that if you cannot handle this relationship, that here's an opportunity for you to walk away before anybody else, before anybody gets hurt, before we become too entangled and too involved with each other.
All right. Derek, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I'm just curious. So, if you all are saying that you identify as polyamorous, so my question is, do you identify that way because you just so happen to have fallen in love with multiple persons, or or did that come afterward? Like, are you just like, would you still consider yourself poly if there were no other person involved? Does that make sense?
I would. So I
Great
didn't
question.
know what polyamorous was. Um, I didn't understand it, or well, I didn't know about it. But I knew back when I was 18 that I didn't want to be tied to one person. And unfortunately, I was raised in a house where you find a husband, and you marry him, and that's it. But everybody I've ever been on with, I cheated on every last one of them. And it's not because I didn't love them and I didn't want to still be with them, but I wanted to be with them too. Like, I just could never find it in myself. I mean, I can do it for so long, but then eventually it's just, I felt like I was drowning. Like, I couldn't be who I am, and I couldn't live. And I might as well not breathe because I couldn't be.
Okay.
For me, it was well before I thought about relationships or sex in any kind of adult manner. I was raised in a house with a dysfunctional parents, as far as the only reason they stayed together was because of the idea that divorce is bad. They were super, super Roman Catholic. They were like, no, you don't get divorced. So they dealt with the fact that they hated each other. And anybody who does that, oh, we'll stay together for the children, or we'll stay together because divorce is bad, you're fooling yourself if you think people can't tell, especially children. Children don't know the nuances of lying. They just see the truth of how you act and how you feel and the way the room feels. So I knew early on, just because someone's married and just because someone says I love you to this person, that has nothing to do with reality or actual love or whether or not they're happy. So I grew up seeing love as this broken thing, but I also saw other families where Mom and dad were perfectly happy. They were actually in love the way that TV shows it all the time. So it didn't make me think that love was bad or broken as much as what people tell you about it isn't always the truth. Like there's exceptions to every rule. So early on, I started looking for that exception to every rule, regardless of the topic. Love just happened to be one of them. And I thought of
Wow.
that idea. Yeah. At that age, I didn't know about sex yet. So I'm sitting there going, okay, well, if they say you can only love one person, but they don't love each other, I mean, that can't be what love is supposed to be if they're that unhappy. So in my child brain, I'm comparing it to the other versions of love I've seen, like friends and children and, brothers and sisters, that kind of thing. And only in one brand of love did anyone ever act like you could only love one person. Like people tell you, oh, you have a huge family, you're incredibly lucky. Oh, you've got 10 brothers and sisters, you are rich with love. And that applied to every version. You've got tons of friends, you're rich with love. And only when it came to the marriage portion of it, where that suddenly changed and that made no sense to me. So I assumed it was one of those phrases that was just said for the sake of saying it and didn't really apply to everything. There had to be an exception to that rule.
Could I ask one more question? Thank you
Yeah.
for asking that. That's fascinating to hear. I had a couple of questions, but I just want to ask one more at this point. And that is because we sort of alluded earlier to the difference between marriage in terms of like a love relationship between or a decision between a group of adults in this case and the legal concept of marriage. So I'm curious as to, are there complications of having these type of relationships when it comes to the legal aspect in terms of like what the rights that the legal contract of marriage affords persons who are a part of it? Are you not able to take part in those? Because I know, like, for instance, like with same-sex marriage, one of the reasons why there was a push to go to have full-on marriage was because, okay, you want people to be able to visit you in the hospital, and you want like end of life rights, and you want somebody to be able to inherit whatever you are left, whatever you leave here. So do those things kind of come into play when you have these type of relationships? Like what happens with your estate should you die? I mean, not without being morbid, but you get like,
those are complications, but there's ways around it. Just like with anyone who is, say you're single for any particular reason, you're just not married. You can assign like power of attorney to whoever you like. And you can have power of attorney with more than one person. Like you can have a list of folks if you need to do so. But yes, marriage does make it easier in a legal sense for people to wrap their head around. So in a hospital situation, that's the most common place where you're going to run into a real problem. Estates and things like that, power of attorney fixes all of that. The hospital is where you run into the problem. But that's the same thing. Yeah. Same-sex marriage, it's just confusing to people.
or like taxes, because like let's be be honest that our system, America, is really flawed because people who are married get all of these things whether they love each other or not. So I'm jealous because they get to park in the park because they're married and they get to claim all these kids or whatever. I don't get that because I'm not married. So likewise, that would also, so there are other complications I would guess that you don't get to take advantage of.
I just see that as I get so many other benefits. I don't worry about the tax break.
All right, Q, I'm gonna come to you. I want to hit a couple of these because then I have maybe a polarizing question. So I'm gonna get to my question in a minute. This one says, have they assigned nights to spend with each other? And I think about that because my reference is my wife is really into this. What is it called? Seeking sister wives or sister wives or whatever. And so the one guy who has like 5 wives, he has a night assigned to each of the thing. And I think that's what this person is asking. Do you how do you cordon off your time to be with multiple people? Tia, you can start.
Well, I live with my people, so
That's the easiest way.
I guess that makes it easy.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
the
easy.
easiest
Like
way
you
by
ready
far.
to go to sleep? Yeah. So like, we all sleep together. I sleep in the middle, and they sleep on the outer sides. Now, if there's going to be like intimate times or whatever, we have a guest room which we utilize. so that I can have a long time and the other person is, not there.
Yeah, the details are going to depend on the number of partners, the kinds of relationships you have, because, and that's the thing, is people keep acting as if there's no variety to the relationships they have involving love with other factions. How do you separate your time with a large family? You don't get to visit everybody every day, kind of thing. And some people you just naturally are more attached to, and some people need more time than other people. I've dated people where seeing them once a week was plenty. They've got busy lives. They give me one night a week where we can actually see each other, go on a date, and that's plenty. And then there's other people that they're addicted to the cuddles and they want to see you all the time, and that's just what they need emotionally to be happy. So how you work it out is absolutely going to be different from one relationship to the next, and is going to change dramatically as you add someone in. And if it doesn't work for you, if you think about bringing someone in and their needs dramatically conflict with the needs of the other people you're in a relationship, you're going to speak with your other partners. You're going to let this person know, hey, I've got these obligations. This is what I can do. Are you okay with that? Can you live with that? And we're all adults. This isn't,
right.
People act as if it's all black and white. No, we're adults. If you're willing to do this, then you accept there's limitations, like a long distance relationship. The relationship is worth the difficulty of keeping it going, even though you're far away from each other. You decide if it's worth it.
So I think you guys have already kind of answered this about commitments and promises to the others. But the second part, I think, is really a good question. What happens if the vows or commitments or promises are violated? Edward said, out.
Well, I mean, it's like any other relationship. If somebody, in a monogamous relationship, if somebody violates the vow you made to each other, what do? They keep acting as if it's more complicated or difficult. What would you do with your spouse if they violated the vows that you took together?
Right.
The answer is exactly the same.
Exactly.
It just depends on if you want to work it out or if you don't.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth it?
If they did something that violated what goes against the ground rules that you guys laid, and you feel like, well, maybe you played a part and maybe you helped them to feel like they weren't receiving everything that they needed, and that could have been also their own fault for not voicing what else they needed from you. And so then they felt that they have to go and do these things, and then once that issue is addressed, and we can come to a conclusion. Now, do we want to continue to try to make this work, or are you going to move on?
Yeah.
And can we come back from this violation?
Michelle wants you to say something, Q, but I have a question that I have to interject, and then I'm gonna let you go, Q. I promise. Okay, I said this is gonna potentially sound crass. It's not intended to be, but it may. Do you have to be gay or part of the LGBTQI community to be in this type of relationship?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because again, remember, it's about love, not sex. So can you love?
I keep having a hard time
That's the part,
dividing that.
Really?
if you bring yourself back to
I'm
that.
talking about
You never had sex with somebody you weren't in love with?
yes, but I'm talking about from the perspective of like being in a relationship.
Well, you have relationships with people all the time that you're
doesn't
not
make you gay.
sexually attracted to. Exactly.
Well, but I
you
think
don't love your father or your brother.
I think the idea, because I was thinking this earlier, is that for a lot of us, we sort of compartmentalize love, and that there are different types of love, which I think, well, a lot of us agree on that. But then when we hear you speak about like your relationship and you compare it to like having brothers or sisters, for us that's a conflation, because it's like we think of those types of loves as different.
And that's the only reason why people don't understand it, is because think about how many married couples are old. They love each other dearly, but they've passed their sexual prime. Is their love no longer legitimate and real simply because they no longer have sex? Not in any way. No one says grandma and grandpa aren't really in love, but add sex to it and everyone gets confused. That's the stumbling block.
But
remove sex from the equation as being important.
Yeah, it can be a stumbling block, but I'm not saying that it is for me. I'm just saying that I think of romantic love as separate from like a love that is platonic. Or
Here's the question: why? Why are they different things? Because love, realistically, because whatever definition you're about to give it that makes it different, apply that rule to grandma and grandpa that we were just talking about. Does that rule still make sense?
Let me play through it in my head.
If it still makes sense when you apply it to grandma and grandpa, then it's okay. Explain it to me, and I will absolutely agree with you. But if you take the reason why you think they're separate, and it doesn't make sense when you apply it to grandma and grandpa who no longer have sex just because they're old as dirt, right? If it doesn't make sense for them as no longer being legitimate, then you've got to recognize the problem isn't with those of us who don't have that problem. The problem is with you not being willing to wrap your head around the idea that love and sex aren't in any way required for each other.
So there's no problem because there's no. I mean, there's no judgment because.
Oh, I don't mean you. I just mean people who can't wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
That's why, and it's always that question.
I think for me, one thing that I see a little that would be different is the whole the attraction, because grandma and grandpa are still attracted to each other, whether or not they're having sex or whatnot.
Are they sexually attracted to each other?
Are they really? Have you ever seen a 90-year-old you're attracted to? I mean, just being honest.
There's a reason why sexually transmitted diseases occur in nursing homes.
True.
There's a reason.
Very true.
That's a lack of opportunity too.
All right, Q. Come on, you've been having something to say, and then I got a whole nother set of questions. So.
Sure. One of my questions, it flew away in my head, but I did have a question, and it kind of went to what Dr. Bright was talking about. But this is more of a question of double standards. So here's a hypothetical. I'm gonna ask both of you this, more so Tia, but I still want to get your side as well. So Tia, if and I'm talking about double standards, but if your husband and you have a wife also, if he decided to add a male partner for himself, would that be an issue? And then on the flip side, Edward, if you decided to add a male partner for yourself, would that be a problem for your female partner?
So for
right,
me,
Tia, you go
no,
first.
it's not a problem, but you've never disclosed this to me before. So for you,
Right.
for him to be like, oh yeah, so I'm in now. Okay, when did this happen? And not that it's a problem, but like I just want to know, like, because you could have been expressed that to me. Like we're very open and we talk about a lot of stuff. So cool. When did you decide this, and like let's move forward and how you want to move in that, and what does that look like for us, and what does that look like for you?
Okay. All right,
My
Edward.
husband likes women, so
I think your previous question about do you need to be a member of the LGBT community to be poly, it definitely helps remove complications, say that sort of thing happens, because I've personally been in relationships where so someone who's new to it, they've never really given it thought. They were born and raised never even considering the option that you're allowed to be in love with more than one person.
Right.
That opens up a lot of thoughts in their head, which for a lot of people, they never think about whether or not they're gay or bi or any other thing, simply because they don't allow themselves to think about it. Realistically, when you look at the spectrum, most people are not this or that. They're somewhere in the middle, and that's just mathematically the way it works. But they never stop to think about it. So this opens up their mind, and suddenly they start considering it. And when you're with someone who allows you to communicate and be that honest and tells you it's about love more than sex, it does open up a lot of doors for people where they didn't really think about talking about it before or even considering it before. And now they're like, in her situation, he never told her, hypothetically, if he never told her, it very well could be because he's new to it and he had never been comfortable enough with anyone to even, especially himself, to ever think about it. So it really is more about trust than anything else. So if you are open-minded enough to move past something instead of considering it a problem, then it's just like any other new thing that pops up in a relationship. If my spouse in a monogamous relationship suddenly tells me, oh, they want to move to Alaska, is that a problem? Well, it depends on your relationship, and it depends on, how big of a deal is this to you? Another partner, my other partners don't have to be involved with this other person, right? That's the other thing.
It can be a completely separate.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so
my
a lot of
mind's
people
going
confuse
blown
that.
all over again.
So most poly relationships are not everyone's dating each other equally. That's actually relatively rare. The more common thing is, say a couple that you would consider a normal couple, guy and girl, they're dating each other, but they also are allowed to fall in love with people outside of these two. As long as they don't violate each other's trust and they're open and they're honest with each other, if this person goes off and dates someone else, as long as they're happy, you don't mind. Because really the question is, do I love you enough to care more about you being happy than I care about who gives you that happiness? So if they want to go off and date a guy or a girl,
interesting perspective.
Well, that's really what jealousy boils down to. Do I have to be the person? Well, because it really boils down to that. Yeah. Because if you truly love someone, wouldn't it, in theory, be more important to you that they be happy, regardless of who gives them that happiness, than you being the one who provides it? If you really love them, it's hard to argue with that. Like, if I love my children, I want them to be happy doing whatever they dream of, even if it completely goes against what I think they should do with their lives. If it makes them happy and they grow up and they want to be a stand-up comedian or whatever craziness where I'm just like, oh, you're going to be broke for life. If it makes them happy, if I truly love them, I'll support that. If I don't support that, can I really say that I love them as much as I think I do? Mm-hmm. So you got to ask yourself that question.
I'll also say, for jumping back to you, Dr. Bright, well, I don't know why. Edward is a whole lot older than anybody thinks he is, so don't think he's like a Derek Jackson, just young.
I'm about to be 48 in 2 weeks.
So yeah, he's not just speaking from a bunch of books read. He has experience behind what he's saying.
Okay, so
thank you, Q.
Here's kind of throwing this back in there. What would it be abnormal for someone to be Christian and be polyamorous in your minds?
I would say it's not common. I mean, I personally know people that are devoutly religious. Well, I should rephrase that. They're devoutly personally religious. They know their family doesn't agree with what they're doing, but their relationship with God is very strong. They have no doubts about their relationship with God, and they're very, very happy in polyamorous relationships. But they also view it differently. They view it as, so I've got one friend who's very, very religious, and they're very happy that way. They told me once, if God didn't want me to do it, he wouldn't make me this happy falling in love. And he was just like, because he says he feels that same joy and love with, he's currently dating 3 people. All 3 people give him the same kind of love that he has, that people describe all the time as like, oh my God, I can't believe I found someone who makes me this happy. And he says that can't be fake. He's very honest with himself. He goes to church all the time. He says, I don't believe that is something that can truly be wrong. And because the rules that tell me it's wrong were written by men, I'm not going to take that as gospel. I'm going to let God judge me. And if I'm wrong, I'll pay for it. But I feel this good and I feel this loved. I'm going to decide that God must have chosen that for me.
So is there a number? So I'm going to start with you, Tim. I like your snicker there, Edward, because you probably know where I'm going. So, yeah. Tim, is there a number of partners your husband would be allowed to be involved with outside of you? Because you said he has a girlfriend outside of you that's not a part of y'all's triad, if I'm using these words correct. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay.
That was me.
Is it a V? That's a V? You have a V?
I have B. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
learning.
if your husband, is there a number that's like, okay, you can have one girlfriend, but you can't have three? Is there any kind of those restrictions in typical relationships that are polyamorous?
I mean, for the guidelines that we laid as our relationship, yes, we only have one girlfriend at a time. Because you also like when they do become intimate and that you have to take all those body counts into consideration and all the energy and things that are passed between that and also being tested on a regular basis and stuff like that. So no, you can't be
Wow.
out here slanging it.
Okay.
Thank. See, this is why, because I'm just in awe because, like, I find it hard to be around one person all the time because that's just me. I could never, like, I can't even get it in my brain, like having multiple people around me, and I gotta like, I don't know,
Really?
all of them.
So,
And,
Derek, you don't have friends right now who you know actually slanging it, but they just doing it undercover. They not open. They not open with it. I know
Do
a
I have
lot of
friends?
whores.
That's
do I have
super
friends?
common.
No, of course I have friends. I'm talking about for me. Like, I totally get
Okay,
it.
I got you.
I'm just saying,
Right.
for me, from looking outwardly to you all, and I'm thinking like it's hard for me. I don't like people like that. Like,
Right. And if you're not that kind of person, it wouldn't be the lifestyle for you.
right,
Just
exactly.
like people who are introverted don't like to go to the bars and the clubs for partying. So for them, they're sitting there going, I can't picture that lifestyle, but that doesn't make it wrong. Whereas in a relationship status, people who don't get it will regularly tell you, because I don't understand what you enjoy, I think it's wrong.
Yeah, I
And
don't think
that's where the problem is.
Yeah, I can't pass judgment. Whatever
Right.
you do, I just think it's interesting because for me, I'm thinking like, wow, that's
See,
a lot of emotional.
for me, I'm an
energy.
emotional sponge, right?
Oh.
So I'm one of those people. If there's more love to give and more love to get, absolutely. The only time it becomes a problem is just physical time. Do I have enough time to be able to see people without making anyone else that I care about not have enough time? And that's where I draw my lines. You can only juggle so much. It's just like working or anything else. Can I handle 2 jobs and not burn out? Right? Is it worth it? And you decide on your own. If the love is good enough, then you find the time.
Yeah,
And you still have to find time for yourself because that's the other
Exactly.
thing too, is that like, you have to have time for yourself or you won't be good for anyone else.
yeah.
That's the same with monogamy as well as any other relationship. You have to take care of yourself. So there's no difference.
So, because I was just thinking, like, I couldn't imagine having to manage 3 like you said, your friend has 3 partners. I couldn't imagine myself having 3 partners, man. Like the emotional toll of
I can't
managing
imagine having
3
4 or
partners.
5 children. I can't imagine being able to find the time and juggle, because I don't have children myself,
It's rough.
but I have friends who have a small tribe of children, and I'm like, how do you do it? And they're just like, you just do it. You find a way, right? So when you think you can't imagine it, just remember people do it all the time. And if it's worth it, you figure it out.
Now you said something that makes me, and you said you didn't. Tia, do you have any kids? And if so, how do you explain the poly life to them?
Well, my wife has a son whom we're raising, all of us are raising, and we don't explain anything. He knows that he calls me Mama Tia, he calls his mom, and he calls my husband by his name. And he just knows that he's receiving what he needs. He gets food, shelter, clothing, and all the love. And like he has double the amount of parents. He has double the amount of eyes. He has double the amount of love. So currently, only thing that he knows is that we love each other. Not
Will
like
that be more of a
and
conversation later on in the, like, I guess once he gets older, will
yeah,
that be more of a conversation?
yes, later it will be a conversation on like how how does this necessarily work, but like it's like any other child that's being raised in the house. You give them love. It's not like you up there having sex and making whole pornos and stuff in front of them. Because that's what people tend to think too, that you just round here doing the most in front of your children just because you have multiple partners. No, like I don't, or we don't do, all that. I mean, we hug and kiss each other because children need to see love and they need to know that they're loved. So we hug and kiss on him, and we hug and kiss each other. But like we just teach him that you're loved. You got a house. You get almost everything that you want because you're the only child and you're spoiled. And you
And
got
people
three
also forget
parents to
that
run to.
you're not going to break children by showing them a loving childhood, right? So regardless of how they're shown that, children don't know anything better. They know the reality of the emotions in the room. So just like the divorcing parents, they know you're not happy. So if you think an unhappy classic marriage is healthier for children than a non-traditional happy relationship, you're fooling yourself and you're lying to yourself for no real reason. Kids feel tension and they feel the emotions that are in the room. If they grow up and they see all the adults around me are happy, they love each other, the specific rules of it don't matter to them. They just know everybody's happy.
Right.
When they're old enough for it to be the conversation that Q was talking about, then they'll be old enough to understand a little bit better the nuances, and you just go, not every relationship's the same. Some people do this, some people do that. But are we happy? Do we love each other? And the kid will know the answer. They'll be like, yeah, we're all happy. We all love each other. And they're not going to worry about it past that.
I have two more questions, and we only have about 9 minutes left. And I have two more questions. Edward, this one is going to be for you. Since you have a girlfriend, what happens if your girlfriend got pregnant by one of her partners, and now you're involved in having to be part of the caretaking of this baby that you didn't participate in making?
So that's just like, well, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this that makes any sense. So going into the relationship, you tell each other about the fact that you're dating other people, even if they're not someone that I personally am involved with. So say she's dating someone separately from me. I don't have anything to do with that person. I am supporting the fact that she is happy with someone else and she's happy with me. So I decide on my own how much I want to participate in that other portion of the relationship. So if she has a child with this other person, if I love her, who the child is from, it's up to them to decide whether or not it's appropriate for me to be part of that and help raise them in any particular way. If they say that, they just want to raise them between the two of them and I'm not part of that, that's their decision to make. If they say that, hey, you're awesome, we would like you to be there at all the gatherings and the birthdays and things like that, then I personally would choose to support that as well, because I love her. I want her happiness. I'm not concerned about the other details. If I'm against that, I would let her know in the first place, I'm perfectly fine with you dating people, but let's talk about children. If this happens, I don't want to have anything to do with the children because that's just not my thing. So those guidelines are preset. And that's just like any other monogamous relationship. If you decided one partner says, I don't ever want kids, and the other one gets pregnant, that's all about communication. You should have worked that out before you got to this point. And if you did, well, then you know how to handle it.
All right. My last question, then I'm going to let Derek or Q, if they have any additional questions. How does one go about entering into these relationships? So, and how do you have that conversation? Like, how do you have the conversation? Tia, how did you get, I don't want to use the word nerve. How did you overcome, how do you get into these relationships?
Nerve was the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you have the boldness to do it?
Yes.
I just opened my mouth and talked. I talked to my husband, like, there are certain things that I felt like I didn't get to truly express and be. Like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I got to really be myself. And so I started expressing these things to him and just letting him know where I was at, what I was feeling, and letting him know that, like, these are my feelings. There's not anything that you can necessarily do to make it better. It's something that I have to do, and then I just started exploring and looking at different relationships and how different things go and how that works, and actually coming up with the name. Well, I didn't come up with the name, but like finding that this is the actual lifestyle, and I'm not the only one. And there's not to say that there's nothing special about me, but I'm not inventing wheel. And like there are healthy relationships that actually work. And so we did the pros and cons. This was a solid conversation for at least 3 years before there was an agreement that we could do that we can open this up, and that we can move forward with what we discussed. And we went through all the scenarios, the what ifs, the what nots, all the, and we could end up in divorce, and we could this and we could that, and that those conversations before we actually opened our marriage made us stronger, because we were having hard conversations that we didn't have before. Because realistically, most time you be with somebody so long that like you know when they're mad, when they're upset, and like you don't want to upset them. So like if you know that you're having a conversation and it's upsetting them, 9 times out of 10, somebody has to be civil. So somebody to make themselves small and not necessarily always get their point across, and you won't have these conversations. So then the other person continues to just do whatever they want. So it forced us to be 100 with each other all the time, regardless if it hurts your feelings. Because then we started having these meetings where we were like, you leave your feelings over there. This meeting is not about your feelings. It's about the facts. It's about the bullet points, and like where we are right now and what we need to do to move past this. And like once we move past this, like how do you intend on us to grow? So then after we had those conversations, then we were able to say, yes, okay, we can do this. And these are the guidelines and the boundaries that we're going to set for ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that guidelines and boundaries don't change, because they do, especially when it comes to relationships like this. But when you get to that road, you cross that, and then you have another conversation about new guidelines and new boundaries and things of how they're going to move forward then.
Q, Derek, do you have any additional questions you want to ask?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Let me ask, and this is for both of y'all actually. When it comes to what's the word I'm looking for? So sometimes you'll get people who they ask questions out of pure curiosity, or they're intrigued, or sometimes you get people ask questions because they kind of insensitive, or they're snide comments. Do you think a lot of people who kind of throw jabs at you, are they really projecting their own desires upon you? Like they try to say, oh, all you want to do is y'all just having orgies and stuff like that. When in actuality, they really wish that they could have that option if they want to. Like, how much do you think the questions that people ask are them projecting their own desires upon your relationship?
Sometimes it is, and they can't be truthful with themselves, and so then they got to be mad at somebody else that's living their best life. So.
Did either of your parents go, what the hell are you doing?
I didn't raise you like that.
But you did raise me to be a smart, independent individual. So
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, so it was like I didn't raise you like that, but I was like, but on the other hand, my mom was like, you're exactly the person that I raised you to be. You don't take no shit. You stand on your own 2 feet. You do what works for you. So if it works, it works. I can't judge you. I live my life.
I think for Q's question, because I do like alternative life coaching, and I counsel couples all the time, and like I kind of help people figure out the roadblocks when they're new to this kind of lifestyle. So they're trying it out, they're running into roadblocks. So I'll do counseling for groups of couples that are trying to figure out how to form those boundaries and such. And I get those questions all the time that you're talking about. And depending on how they say it, yes, sometimes you absolutely can tell this person, they cheat on every person they've ever dated, and they're acting like I'm the hypocrite. But at the same time, I don't respond to the questions thinking about that. I respond to the question with, okay, genuinely, what part of it is the stumbling block for them to really wrap their head around? Like the sex and the love part, more people often than not who genuinely want to know, that's the only part that confuses them. As soon as they go, oh, wait, it can be just about love and sex doesn't have to be in there. All of a sudden, like you can see light bulbs going off and they're like, okay, now it's starting to make more sense. So I just sort of approach it as if they're genuinely trying to learn, regardless of how they ask the questions.
Can I ask
All right.
my
Yes.
final question? So just for both of you, whomever wants to chime in. So do you think that monogamy is part of human nature, or is it like just part of like the heteronormative kind of like pressures of society? Like, do you think, because I know I've heard a lot of people, there's a lot of debate on whether or not we're meant to even be monogamous. Like, is that a thing, or are we just like forcing it?
I think as an institution, we're told that, and I think it absolutely applies to some people. Just like if you ask about gender roles, do you think there are gender roles that are supposed to be there? For some people, absolutely. They're absolutely happy if they get to do these certain things, but it doesn't apply to everyone. I think the bigger problem is, as a society, we act as if monogamy is the only option that is okay. If people could just accept the idea that, just like anything else, it definitely works for some, it won't work for others. If it doesn't work for you, no one's asking you to do it.
Right. There's some
Cute.
relationships, there's some poly relationship where, like, I have a partner, say my husband didn't date anybody and he's just with me, and that's fine. He's monogamous. Like, he doesn't want to date anybody else. They have that. And I just feel like it's to each his own. So it's, whatever you feel.
My question was almost going to be the same. It's almost the same as Derek's, so I'm glad he asked it, but it's kind of on the flip side. Is a cheater regardless? So whether they're in a monogamous relationship or whether they get in a poly relationship, they're still going to be a cheater because that's their character. Or do some people cheat because you're probably trying to live a certain lifestyle that your nature isn't designed
Interesting question.
Okay, for that one, if you don't mind me jumping on this one, Tia.
Sure.
There's a big difference. So I think there are people who absolutely cheat simply because they think they have to not hurt their regular relationship. Like, they're married, they think, oh, my spouse would never accept the idea that I need more than just one person can give. So it forces them into that spot. If they had permission, it wouldn't be cheating, because the definition of cheating isn't how many partners you have. It's
Right.
Did you violate the trust of your partner? So if there are other people who they can have permission and they'll still just do it and keep it a secret because that's the part of it that they like, right? So it depends on your personality. Did you feel like you couldn't do it if they accepted you, or are you doing it either way just because you like the thrill of what you're not allowed to have?
Real. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much, Edward, Tia, Derek, Q. Thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate. This has been a very informative conversation, something that I knew nothing about and wanted to understand. So I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity, if for no other person, giving me the opportunity to learn something that I did not know. I'll say that, I think I'm glad that we have the opportunity, that technology now affords us the opportunity to have these conversations and meet people we would otherwise not meet. So again, thank you guys very, very much. Y'all have a great day. Next week, we have another great discussion. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You got to hop on and see. Next Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Everybody take care. Goodbye.
Bye.